Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Uninterrupted. I'm your host, Chris Hamons, and with me today is our COO, John Faust. John, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
All right, guys, you know the routine. As always, we're going to hop right into it. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is really kind of explaining why cybersecurity isn't a set it and forget it type of industry. So John, let me ask you this. How, personally, for just you, how do you stay current on top of cyber threats?
Well, so I think the biggest thing that I have and that we cultivate here at Forbes, specifically with James and I, is a deep, deep curiosity. It's like one of my personal philosophies is always be learning and always getting better and all those sorts of things. And I know James follows that as well. And so it's just fun to kind of keep up with all the stuff and to never be stagnant and to always be growing. And so we have a deep curiosity here of how do I continue to learn this stuff, always be learning more, learning what's new that's out there. And the fact that every day is different than the last is what makes this like so exciting to continue to do. So for us, it's kind of a passion, and it's very easy to want to learn more because it's just how we are in nature.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, you know, at Forbes, we staff some certified ethical hackers. Mm-hmm. You know, why do we do that instead of relying only on IT certifications?
Yeah, so I want to know the tradecraft, right? I want to be able to say, what are the hackers doing? And then we can look to say how to defend from that. And so it's easier whenever you kind of know the tradecraft that they're doing. You can put yourself into that mindset. You can have the people here that can guide you and go into the mindset of like, what does it really mean to be a hacker? What are they going after? What are those sorts of things? And really a lot of it is just pushing until the system tells you no. And then how can you get around where it tells you no? And that whole mindset of saying, okay, this is the tradecraft that's being taught. This is the kind of playbooks that people are following. These are that sort of stuff. That lets us know what we have to defend against. And then if we have that good baseline, whenever some new tactic comes up or something like that, then we can say, okay, this is what we need to do next. This is the hole that we have in our system that we need to patch and fix and come up with a different method, technology, whatever, process, procedure, what have you, in order to go and say, okay, well, this is how I mitigate that threat.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, when I talk to a lot of businesses, you know, that have internal IT teams, they don't really seem to have a lot of time to stay uptrained for the most part, right? So I know, you know, how often do we attend a conference just to try to stay on top of what hackers are doing?
Yeah, so there's a lot that you're kind of in firefighter mode, where a lot of internal IT people kind of just putting out fires constantly, and they don't have a lot of the time to be able to do the continuing education that they would maybe need to do in order to stay up with this. Also, there's a factor that there is no requirement of continuing education in IT. Anybody can kind of do IT. Anybody can do an IT company like ours and say that you're doing these things, and there's no regulatory body that says, wait, you have to have some certifications or you have to have some continuing education to do this. Like if you look at a CPA firm, they have to do continuing hours, or you have to be a certification to be a plumber or any of those sorts of things, electrician, whatever. That doesn't exist in IT. And so the people who can kind of get put in those positions where they can continue to do. A lot of businesses, because IT isn't the core part of their thing, when they have internal employees, that are doing the IT, they don't really understand fully the amount of investment that it takes into constantly training and making sure they're up to date on the newest things. We're going to some kind of cyber conference, some kind of continuing training thing on average once a month here at Forbes. We have somebody that's generally physically at a conference to learn more about either what are the operations that we need to do better, what are the hacker tactics that are going on, what's new in the industry. We go to specific conferences. Some of them are defensive cybersecurity conferences, and we've actually gone to offensive cybersecurity conferences to say, okay, well, let's learn more about the tradecraft from the offensive side, from like the penetration testing side, so that then we can be better prepared on the defensive end. And so we invest a lot of time and resources and even money into going to these events or buying certifications, buying trainings, all those sorts of things in order to come up with what's newest on the horizon and staying. Also, a lot of the people that are doing the cybersecurity trainings here have stepped away and don't do much from the actual IT side of things. We kind of have a split that's happened at Forbes where I have people who are more on the IT side and they have certain cybersecurity that they need to do for implementation. And then we have people that are really on the cybersecurity side and leading the thought leadership from that side there. And they've kind of split into two different lanes. now, and where if you have an internal IT person whose job is to keep the lights running, so to speak, from a technology perspective, they might not have the ability to have the overhead, to have the free time, quote unquote, to go do the training that they would need to do in order to be on top of cybersecurity.
Gotcha. Okay. So tell me this: what's one thing that you've learned at a conference that you think most business leaders have never heard about?
So one really, really big one is I think business owners, and we've touched on it quite a few times here, I think business owners think that they can off-ship their responsibility to somebody else for technology and cybersecurity, and that they are not the ones that are actually, at the end of the day, responsible for the cybersecurity of their company. We've heard this more and more and more. When you go through an event and you have cyber insurance, the cyber insurance comes after the business leader. Right? The hackers are going after the business leader's money. Like, they're going after you in that when they're trying to financially hit a company, it's more because it's about money, the three things we talk about all the time: getting in the middle of a financial transaction, understanding the financials, blackmailing you for your sensitive data after they steal it, or logging up your operations so that you consider paying a ransom a good way to get those back. Those are all three financial things that at the end of the day hit the business leadership. They hit the business owner. He's going to be the one left holding the bag of this. And I think there's a big misconception of that the business leadership can 100% off-ship this responsibility out to their IT guy or a third party or something like that, and where they need to actually be involved in it. The other thing that I think business leaders, and I think most of the world is kind of in the dark on this one, is how easy initial access really is. It's a lot easier for one of your endpoints or email accounts to get taken over than you think it is. And that's where a lot of this starts. And if you're not looking for the right things, you can be really vulnerable due to having this false sense of security that I have everything behind firewalls and spam filters and EDR antivirus, that I'm good. And it's more than that. It's much more than that. It's much more than buying some products and putting those SKUs together. And we've talked about this in the past, where you have a nice oven and a stand mixer and all these expensive kitchen tools and everything. But if you don't know how to cook, you just have a bunch of expensive
tools sitting around.
Yeah. It's the way to make all that work together to generate a great meal is really the special sauce to this. Is getting everything to work together as a cohesive unit to achieve your business goals. That's kind of the real key to it.
And you can check out our other podcast episodes that go into that in more detail as well. Let's switch gears a little bit. How has AI really changed how cyber criminals are gaining initial access?
Yeah, so what we've seen from the AI stuff is the hackers have their own versions of these generative AIs. They have their own large language models. They have all these sorts of things. Really, spelling errors or grammatical mistakes are kind of a thing of the past.
Right.
They can if they take over an email account and they want to use that account to send messages out to get other people, they can actually take the sent items of that person, feed it into a large language model, and then have the emails that get written out of their account that they send on have the exact same voice, even spelling mistakes, errors. It sounds exactly like this person. And so it makes it a lot easier to do that. The other thing that we're really seeing when you look at these hackings that are generative AI is we're seeing where they have been used for actual offensive hacking, not just generating pretty emails like we use them for marketing emails and that kind of stuff, the same kind of thing that the hackers use. Aside from that, for the actual tradecraft, we're not seeing so far new techniques being used. We're just seeing faster execution of processes that were manual. So the tradecraft is similar, it's just being more automated through AI behaviors and being done faster and more efficiently. And sometimes we're seeing these things where it's like, hey, there's been some known hacks now where AI did the whole hack all the way through. So it did the initial access of taking over an email account and then lateral movement and all those sorts of things with very little to no human involvement. It didn't do anything different, though. It did the same tradecraft that if you were looking for things correctly, you hopefully would have been able to spot. It just did it faster and more efficiently. And so that's the piece where we're seeing is I think we're going to go into an area here where we're going to see more. And at some point, we'll see something different. They will make a change that has some different tactics. We're not seeing it yet, but we know it's coming. That's why we keep doing the education to look out for. But we're going to see more attempts. where it was like, hey, you needed a more sophisticated hacker to do something on one of these small, medium businesses, we're going to have a little bit more sophisticated automated attacks due to the AI adapting and overcoming situations that maybe you would have needed a different level of hacker to do.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's reverse roles here. How has AI helped in the defense side of things, keep preventing hackers from, being able to do one of the 3 bad outcomes that you always talk about?
Well, so like AI has been existing in the cybersecurity world for years, and we used to call it machine learning. So it's really the similar thing. You cannot have a SIM which is going through and pulling all the log files of basically everything that happens on your computer or a firewall or any of those sorts of things. The SIM grabs all those log files of every transaction that happens on it, and then it goes and analyzes those for indicators of compromise and things like that. You can't have a human physically do that. So you have to have some kind of way to parse all that information and data, and basically AI has been doing that for years. It was just under a different term called machine learning, but it's the same thing. So AI has been in the cybersecurity space for years and years and years. One of the things that it's helped us to do recently is, from the compliance side of things, okay, let's gather in all this compliance data from all these disparate sources and then be able to say, okay, show me where the holes are in what we're missing due to a misconfiguration or some of those sorts of things. And so it's helping shed light on things faster that were harder to see in the past or took more manual labor to see in the past. We're able to automate some of those things more so that we can see, okay, where is there a vulnerability that maybe we're not seeing, and looking at some of those things.
Gotcha. Okay. So what's something business leaders maybe thought was secure a few years ago, but maybe not anymore now?
It depends on how far you look back. I mean, I think a lot of people think that email, if you put everything in Office 365, it was secure and going to be really hard to get into. And it's just, there's always a balancing act between cybersecurity of your end users needing to be able to use it and the actual security, right? So any time where I have some kind of exchange point from an end user needing to log into a system or do something like that, then I have the potential for a hacker to gain access to there. So I think people think that initial access is way harder than it really is. I think people think their email is more secure than it is. There's guardrails that you can put around it, but most places don't have that. Most places we're not even seeing have the ability to detect if somebody that's not them accesses an email or their computers or their Office 365 environment, all those sorts of things. So I think there's this big misunderstanding, and I had it a few years ago where it was like, okay, well, if I have this vulnerability that's on my internal system, what does it matter? Because it's going to be hard to get into my internal system. Well, the hackers have changed their methodology and have caused initial access to be a lot easier. So we now have to assume that an endpoint's going to get taken over, that an email account's going to be taken over. What do you do from there to make sure that if that does happen, that the damage isn't as bad to you?
Gotcha. Okay. So how quickly does a new hacking technique spread once a hacker is kind of finds out about it? How quickly does something like that spread?
It depends. Right? So before there were, and this still happens, there's these hacking houses, and you can look at the fingerprints of these large hacking organizations that are throughout the world, who you can say, hey, this is this organization versus this organization because of the playbook that they follow. They have their own fingerprints. A high-level hacker came up with the hacking tactics that they do. If more automation starts to happen with these sorts of things, then it can kind of maybe make that a little bit easier to handle, or a little bit different, and maybe make it a little bit more homogeneous. That could end up being a good thing for hackers if the tradecraft ends up being relatively the same across most of them. It could be good for the defensive side of things to be able to put more generic controls over stuff, because now we have to look at, hey, what does this house do that's different than this house, that's different than this house, and come up with kind of an overall system for that. If it becomes more similar, then maybe the defense gets a little bit better. The other thing that's really going on, though, that we've seen is, like we talked about in our Mythos video before for Anthropic's Claude's new model about how it found vulnerabilities quickly. Well, there was one the other day where I believe it was ChatGPT or some version of that uncovered a vulnerability and escaped out of its sandbox, so it escaped its guardrails, and it actually exploited that vulnerability on a system. So there's things like that to look out for, where they can be used to help identify bad things or problems in your systems fast. But if you're not patching those quick enough, to me it looks like, okay, well, now that turns the whole vulnerability game on its head, where that's only going to allow initial access to happen easier. How do you then detect, respond, and recover from the other situations that goes on.
Gotcha. Okay. So how important, even if you're not using it in your organization, how important is it for an IT team to really understand everything that they can about AI?
I mean, from a cybersecurity perspective, it's really important. It's the mind of your adversary, right? So if we're looking at trying to go into the hacker mindset about what they're really after, well, now you have another entity, quote unquote, that is involved in that process. And so how does AI handle things? How does AI parse things? How does it program? How does it allow maybe some people who aren't as sophisticated to write code, who weren't able to write code before? You know, are they going to be able to write custom code that will then compile something that can bypass an EDR-style antivirus because it's now a new program that nobody's seen before? It doesn't have any signatures or the behavior is different. So then how do you look for that where it's like, okay, well, before we were looking for similarities in these things, now the people that are almost really a level above us, you know, the vendors that we get our stuff from, all that sort of stuff with their security operations centers and all that kind of stuff, how are they reacting to these sorts of things? It's one of the reasons why we're not married to any cybersecurity software here at Forbes. We're constantly looking for what's actually doing the job. So it's not that we're a shop with one program versus another program versus another program. If we see one of those not doing their job, we'll rip it out and replace it with one that is. And one that works together with our whole ethos here, our whole organism as far as how the cybersecurity all links together and works together. We need to find something that works in a symbiotic relationship with that. But if it's a different component, then we'll swap it out with one that works.
Gotcha. Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to share kind of with our business leaders who are watching just about this whole topic? You know, how just really being mindful of if their team's staying on top of the threats as they evolve?
Like, we're super excited about this, right? And I know that's kind of bad to say because it's, you know, people are, how can you be excited about this sort of thing? Bad things happen from it. But if you're a person who likes to learn, then this is really exciting because you get to learn, things keep evolving, it doesn't get stagnant, and you can have things that you really grow as a person. Your IT person, your cybersecurity person should be excited about cybersecurity. Like, that should drive them to move forward and continue to learn more. You're going to really want to know, what are you doing to make your company better? What are you going and learning? What are you doing? What's exciting to you? What's coming up on the horizon? You're going to want to ask them, like, ask us what we're doing, you know?
Absolutely.
And like, I'm not going to tell you SKUs and things like that. I'm not going to tell you the exact sauce that happens here from our cocktail. Just, you know, we've tried to keep it not to get out there, but, you know, but I'm going to tell you the reason behind these are the different types of things that we do. This is what we're doing. This is our methodology. They should know that. And it shouldn't be like hey, I'm going to pull this up out of whatever and make it up for you. They should know off the top of their head, we're doing this because of this, because it helps mitigate this threat. It doesn't eliminate it. It helps mitigate this threat because we know that if I'm looking backwards from the 3 bad things to happen, then this is how you combat that sort of thing and not make it really detrimental to your end users and do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so really open up that line of communication with your IT team. Ask them the tough questions and make sure they're giving you the answer that you need to hear. And if not, you can always get an unbiased second opinion from us. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining. And as always, make sure you subscribe, like, and follow, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Uninterrupted, a podcast from Forbes Cybersecurity. We hope you walked away with practical insights to protect your business and stay ahead of the latest cyber threats. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. For more tips, resources, and cybersecurity updates, visit Forbes.com, that's 4bis.com, and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay vigilant and stay uninterrupted.